Hey vinyl community, it's Joel coming at you from Planet 13, and this is my September vinyl haul. Not my complete vinyl haul because I did pick up about 20 albums. I'm just going to show you the highlights, some albums that you don't commonly see, or they're kind of interesting in some unique way. Anyway, let's get to it. First album up is The Last Temptation by Alice Cooper. I love this album, and I think it is his best since Welcome to My Nightmare. Some say it's his grunge album, but I disagree. After his last two albums of hair metal albums, and then he had two shock rock metal albums before that, this is Alice kind of forcing himself to get a little more serious, and the album's a little bit more raw. I don't think it really has much to do with grunge, other than he knew hair metal wasn't really gonna be selling all that well. This is a dark and catchy album that came out in 1994, but it feels like a 70s album to me. It's also a concept album that was attached to a comic book series that was written by Neil Gaiman. Neil Gaiman is on fire right now. He's got two hit TV series called Good Omens and American Gods. With this album, you don't really need to read the comic book to understand or enjoy the album at all, but it is kind of a fun little touch. This album is notable by having two songs written by Chris Cornell of Soundgarden, who also does guest vocals on those two songs. These songs are Stolen Prayer and Unholy War. And Chris Cornell originally approached Ozzy with these two songs, but Ozzy turned him down. And when you do listen to them, you can really kind of hear how they do sound like they should have been off of No More Tears, because that's the kind of vibe they have. You can also hear Chris's original demos on these on YouTube. I can't leave a link to it because they're constantly being taken down, but if you search for Stolen Prayer or Unholy War, you'll find them. Next up, we have Alice's newest. It's a 10-inch EP called Breadcrumbs, and it's just 6 songs. It's got 5 covers and 1 original song. I know on the cover it says only 20,000 copies worldwide, and like you, I kind of find that funny because that is not rare. That's kind of a good, significant pressing for a vinyl. But you do have to realize that anything Alice Cooper, it's usually highly sought after and collectible. So, these won't sell out instantly, but I think, within 3 years, they'll vanish. The songs on here are pretty great, and the unfortunate thing is I hate the 10-inch format. I know I'm not going to play this that much just because my record player doesn't have a 10-inch setting, so it's kind of annoying to manually set the needle. I know it's a first world problem, but it's going to stop me from playing this quite a bit, I think. Production-wise, though, this is the best I've heard Alice sound in years. This is a crisp-sounding record, again, produced by Bob Ezrin. Alice was going for a Detroit theme here, and he's backed by MC5's Wayne Kramer on all the songs. So the first cover is his song called Detroit City, which was off the eyes of Alice Cooper, which he put out about 15 years ago, I'd say. And then the next song is an original song called Go Man Go. So our next cover is Bob Seger's East Side Story, and this closes up side A. On side B, we have a really funky Your Mama Won't Like Me by Suzi Quatro. And this is the highlight for me. We get some really cool horns on here. Then the fourth cover song is a soulful cover of Devil with the Blue Dress On by Mitch Ryder and the Detroit Wheels. And then it's kind of merged with the Chains of Love by J.J. Barnes. Finally, we get a cover of MC5's Sister Ann. So this album is only like $13 or so, and I think it's a real steal. You get 6 great songs on here, and it's a sign of, I hope, of what Alice is going to put out in the future. It sounds like he's having a lot of fun here. Alice, doesn't really have to worry about selling records anymore. Well, I guess he kind of does, but I don't think he's stressed out about it. He's just out to have fun, and this is just a fun album. Up next, we have the Waxwork pressing of Altered States. So this soundtrack was composed by John Corigliano. This is a 1980 movie that I've never saw, but I've tried to watch recently, and I just could not get into it. I tried twice to watch it. There's nothing really wrong with the movie. It just wasn't my thing at the time and place. I bought this album used for 30 Canadian dollars, which I assure you it's quite the bargain, because if I bought this new, shipping alone, when you factor in exchange rate and duty fees, would be $30. The album cover is quite glittery, which is cool, and the artwork inside, I like it. Pressing, unfortunately, sucks. It just sounds like hot garbage. It has so many hisses and pops, and I guess that's why this was up for grabs being a used album. You don't usually normally see Waxwork albums around here used, because again, shipping to Canada is so expensive. No one really wants to part with them. Maybe a good cleaning might fix this up for me, but from what I've read on Discogs, no one's really been able to solve this issue with a good cleaning. Now here's a movie soundtrack that I absolutely love. This is Return of the Living Dead. The CD of this is the first album I actually bought off of Amazon back in 1999, 20 years ago. Return of the Living Dead is a wonderful 1985 zombie comedy movie that has this really energetic punk rock soundtrack. First up, we have The Surfin' Dead by the Crumbs. Then we got some TSOL, some Tall Boys, The Damned, and my favorite on the soundtrack, it's gotta be Rocky Erickson's Burn the Flames. Such a cool song. We also have a song by SSQ, which is Stacy Q, who's on vocals. Stacy Q had a very famous 80s pop song called Two of Hearts. If you aren't a horror movie fan, I still think you should grab this album because just for the punk rock music on here alone, it's just worth having. It's just a fun punk rock album. Another soundtrack here is Pee Wee Herman's Big Adventure. This is the 30th anniversary release, although this is on red wax, and it also contains a soundtrack to Back to School. The score for this is just delightful. I love Danny Elfman. He, of course, is probably most famous for Batman and The Simpsons soundtracks. Here's the soundtrack for Eddie and the Cruisers, and it's on the Scotty label. I've never seen this label before. As it also advertised, it's available on CRO2 cassette. I don't know what that means. I guess that's maybe a fancy word for a premium cassette back in the day. This is a 1983 film about a popular band that's kind of in the style of Bruce Springsteen, where they have this charismatic singer, and this charismatic singer, he, I guess, vanishes, and people kind of see him around town, and they think, is that Eddie? I think that's the plot. I haven't seen this movie in a while. I watched it about 8 years ago, and I watched it way back when on cable TV. The soundtrack is still quite popular. On the Dark Side is still being played on the radio to this day. At least I hear it once a week when I listen to the radio at work. Here we have the Sisters of Mercy's Floodland. Sisters of Mercy, I think they've only put out like 3 albums in total, and that was like kind of ended in the early 90s, but they still tour to this day. If you like the song Cat People by David Bowie, you'll probably like the Sisters of Mercy. The singer kind of sings like Bowie on that song, and you have this dark gothic vibe with a lot of female-backed vocals. There's also like a dancey drum machine beat going on here on all the songs. I won't talk too much about the album as it's either love or hate with this kind of 90s goth rock cheese that I certainly eat up. Finally, we have Teenage Head's Some Kind of Fun. This is their 3rd studio album, and so far I'm not a big fan of this one. The music is more new wave and boogie than the punk rock vibe that I kind of love about them. And I find the vocals kind of muddy, like I can barely hear what Frankie's saying. Maybe I just gotta clean this album, or maybe I'll just grow into this one a little more. I don't know. There's nothing wrong with it. I just haven't got into it yet, and I've only spun it twice, so it could be something that like I said, grow into. That wraps up all I have to show you. Until next time, cheers.